Well, then we'll like officially get started then with our post-screening Q&A with me and T.O.N.E-z. I hope everybody enjoyed the film. And if you guys have any comments, questions, please do write it in the comment box and we will answer and address everything. But how did you guys enjoy the film? Was there any insights, anything that you guys took away from it, or anything you guys want to mention about it? One of the things that T.O.N.E-z had asked me, and I want to mention this, T.O.N.E-z had asked me last week when we were talking why I chose Thursday instead of Sunday. He said, Sunday is the best day to kind of do this sort of thing. And I said I had a specific reason for why I chose May 7th. It wasn't about Thursday specifically, it was about May 7th specifically. And so this was really important to me, and this is why I chose this date. Was 9 years ago today, I almost lost my life, and I had to make a decision while I was lying in a pool of my own blood of, do I want to keep living? And if I keep living, what am my ex-husband almost killed me. So this is why I'm such a proponent for domestic violence. And, you know, I kept thinking throughout my marriage, the only way out was going to be homicide or suicide. Either he's going to kill me or I'm going to kill myself. That's the only out of my marriage. And so today, 9 years ago, was the day that I chose, you know what, I'm ending the marriage, but I'm not ending my life. And I have 5 children that I had to, that's what kept going through my head was, as I'm lying in a pool of my own blood, what's going through my head was my 5 children. And what am I going to leave them? And what legacy, what am I leaving for them if I die right now, tonight? And 9 years ago, that was also the night before Mother's Day. So the other thought going through my head was, my mom and my grandmother are going to wake up on Mother's Day and find out that I died. And that's going to be the worst Mother's Day ever. So I can't die tonight. And that was the night that I fully made the conscious decision in my brain, I'm not dying anytime soon. I have a lot more life to live first. Up to that point, I kept thinking, I have to die because my marriage is going to kill me otherwise. My children would be better off without me and their father fighting all the time. And it was just so, this was a pivotal night. So May 7th is a pivotal date in my life. And that's why I chose to release and do the premiere party on May 7th to turn my tragedy and turn it into something positive. Take the trauma. My mom always said growing up, find the positive in something negative. And so that's what I've done with this. And that's why I chose this specific date, was to take this traumatic event in my life and make it something positive, and hopefully other people will see it and hear the message and take something positive away from it. So,
wow.
There you go.
I had no idea, Jack.
Most people don't talk about it.
First of all, I want to apologize for the real men out there who don't do that kind of goofy stuff. You know what I mean? And it's just, I can't even say anything. I don't know what to say about that kind of thing. You know what I mean? Other than, I'm just very glad that you made the choice you made. You know what I mean? Like, whether you couldn't have, even if whether you were a mom or not, you know what I mean? Like, you did the right thing. So I just want to apologize for that guy.
Well, thankfully I'm not
gonna
like my husband was.
All right. Well, we'll let's just hope I never run into him. But anyway, all right. So there's another thing that I wanted to talk about, is because when she talked about her, Jacqui just talked about her life and I didn't know. So this is, as you guys are hearing her story, just the first, and I've known Jacqui for years, and I've never known this. And, so I appreciate the courage you have to talk to not just me, but, people on this chat, on this line. But, like, I told the story about my friend, Tracy, in the film. And, but I also thought about that myself when I was a kid, from being an abused kid. I'm talking about like being, being 3 to 5 years old, all the way up till I was like 12, being knocked unconscious by a guy who's married to your mother, and he's supposed to be your father, right? So, you can get to that point. And it's worse when you're young and you get to that point where you're like, man, you know what? I'm in school. I went to school and probably missed out on a whole bunch of stuff because I just wanted to go to school so I didn't have to be home. So every day towards the end of the day of school, I would just drag going home because it was so random. I just never knew. And this, keep in mind, I mean, I'm tall now. I'm 6 foot tall now, but when I was a skinny little kid, this dude was like 350, 6'4". You know what I mean? So we're not talking about just some average guy, like, So you walk in from the kitchen to the bathroom, and you feel like this boom, and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and then later on it's like 5:30 in the evening, and there's a wet rag on your neck because you've been unconscious that long from being hit. You know what I mean? So it's like when you waking up and those things happen. I'm not gonna get into everything, but it's tons of stuff. You know what I mean? And it was all like brutal stuff. It wasn't nothing the other stuff. You know what I mean? And if it was, I'd say it. And so the reason why I'm saying that is because, boy, did I think about it. I mean, I thought about it a lot because you kind of get to that point where you like, you go to sleep. And then you wake up and I'm talking about, I'm like 8 years old and I'm laying in the bed just what's the point of what's the point of getting up? What's the point of brushing your teeth, taking a bath, or eating cereal, whatever you normally do that people just do every day, it can get like that. So I'm glad I didn't, but I contemplated that a whole lot, like a lot, all the way until I got up to probably about maybe 19 years old. I stopped. I just didn't. And I'm glad, I mean, clearly I didn't. I mean, I'm here. But I'm just saying, like, with those thoughts. So anybody that talks about that, it could be anything. I mean, I know women who have been abused in all kind of ways, and believe me, you know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about. Like, and it's like, so anything, it doesn't matter the reason. So what I'm saying is, I'm sympathetic, like feeling sorry, but I can sort of to whatever the reason is that people feel like they want to do that. You know what I mean? So, and I also learned that real quick. I want to take up too much time. I'm yapping, but one more thing, I did learn that some people can play with it. Like you look on Facebook and you'll see, oh, FML, F my life, or I don't want to be here no more. You get concerned and you go, what happened? Oh, I was nothing. My phone fell, or it'll be some nonsense. But at the same time, I take it all serious because if it be that one person that you could be like, and then you hear about it later. So anyway, I'm not gonna yap too much longer. I ain't want to kill your ears right there. I just want to say my little.
No, we like your yapping. That's what this is about. This is about me and you going live and talking about all this stuff after the film. So yeah, I think it's important that people, talk.
No, she said thank you. You're welcome. Go ahead.
I think it's important for people to talk about their stories, and I believe that talking about suicide and talking about abuse doesn't lead to more suicides. I believe not talking about it does. I believe when people are forced to keep inside and not talk about what they're thinking and how they're feeling, or they try to talk about it and they're told, somebody who's dealing with suicide ideation, like I mentioned in the film, they might not actually want to die, but they're dealing with these thoughts and these feelings and they need to talk about it. And I don't think talking about it causes harm. I think when they're told not to talk about it and then they bottle it up and then they keep bottling it up and then they keep bottling it up, and then it builds and builds and builds, and that's when it gets dangerous. When they're told, don't talk about it, nobody wants to hear about it, nobody cares. But if you let people talk about it, then I think we eliminate that bottling it up. We get an outlet. And sometimes people just need an outlet.
Yeah.
And I mean, music. Yeah. Music is a great outlet. As a writer, I'm a writer. Poetry has been a huge outlet of mine for most of my life, where I'm feeling really bad and I don't want to talk about it, or I don't know how to talk about it. So I can write about it, and I can write about it and then get up and read a poem about it. Or maybe I don't read a poem about it. Maybe I keep it to myself. But, in high school, that's what got me through high school, was writing poetry.
Yeah. I think if you write, like some people feel like, well, I don't know how to write songs. I don't know how to write poetry. Just write.
Yeah, just write.
It's almost like self-therapy. It's almost like self-therapy. Like you kind of like, some people don't want to go to therapy. Some people don't believe in therapy or taking medication. So they're like, I don't want to do that. I'll say, okay, you know what you do? Yo, write it down. Just your thoughts. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to go to music. You'd be surprised because most of the time you can't talk to anybody about that because it's so personal. So you can't talk to anybody about it. So you talk, it's almost like you're talking to yourself, but it's on paper or record, whatever, however you want to do it. But it doesn't have to be some kind of skill or talent you have to get it out. You know what I mean? That's another thing. I'm not saying that's going to cure us or it's the end all be all of it, but it can help in some way. Just to, that saying when you say something, they go, man, don't you feel better because you said it? Like no matter what it is. Imagine if you got a whole bunch of stuff bottled up. You don't have anybody to talk to, but you write it down. It may give you some sort of release. Some sort of release.
Absolutely. I think writing is a really important outlet. My grandmother and my mom can vouch for this, but writing has been what saved me for so long. I would sit there. My grandmother introduced me to a typewriter. I don't know how old I was, maybe 5, 6, 7 years old. That's why my favorite font, if you notice on the website, it's typewriter font. That's what I started with when I was a kid. So that's like ingrained in my brain. But I would write poetry my grandmother gave me a typewriter. Here, write your feelings. So I did. And it was probably the best tool that I've had. And even if you don't share your writings or paintings or songs with other people, I think art is a really powerful outlet for people.
Yeah. Kim, I think your name was Kim, said that she wrote in her diary. So it's almost like what I just said, like just write it down. It doesn't have to have some sort of musical or movie skill. It's just letting it out. Because you may not have that friend that you could talk to. Or even if you do, you still don't want to talk about it because you're embarrassed or keep it to yourself. Whatever the reason is, because a lot of that could be something that happened to you when you was a kid and you never got over it. It could be all kind of stuff. Or something that happened recently, you don't want nobody to know. So, you know what I mean? Like, it's like when they find people's memoirs after they passed away 30 years later, you found out, man, I didn't know he was going through that.
Yeah.
So there's another way to jot it down and get it out. It may not make everything better, but believe me, it'll make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Having an outlet, I think, is really powerful, really helpful. I think, even if you're not a creative person, maybe like Charity, the young girl in the documentary, she runs. That's her outlet. She goes for a run. So maybe somebody who's more athletic goes to the gym, goes and works out. Whatever it is that you need to do, whether, run or walk or climb a wall, or write poetry or write a song or make a movie, make a documentary, whatever your outlet is, I think that, we all need to utilize what those are, and because we all have strengths and we just need to find them. And when we get really, really down, it's harder to want to, like, I know when I'm really down, and my kids know, like, grab the paintbrushes. My kids will say to me, why don't you just go and paint right now? And I'm like, you know what? That's a really good idea. I should go paint. So, I always make sure there's paint supplies around, because if I feel down, painting, just the act of stroking, it's just the paintbrush itself going up and down is very hypnotic and very relaxing.
Let's see if because I see some people in here. I'm trying to see if I can get at least someone to come in and, say something. Let me see. I don't know how to do it though. Let me see. Because I'm scrolling and I'm seeing some folks, and then I don't want to press on the wrong one, and they go, I don't want to say anything. So let me.
Right. Does anyone have anything to say? If anyone wants to raise their hand and chat with us?
Let's see what I can do here. I don't know what I'm doing here, but we're gonna see. Stop video share.
Hi.
Wait, had somebody there? There she is.
Oh, somebody saying
Hi.
something?
Hi, I just finished watching the video. It was great.
Wow, thank you so much.
Oh, there she is. Hey, how you doing?
Yes, I was very, it was very moving and very powerful, and it really hit home in many ways.
I'm happy to hear that. I really hope that this film will reach everybody that it needs to. If anybody wants to see the film and support it, I want to help them to see it, so send me a message. But I think it's such an important film that I want everybody to see it.
Yeah, I wanted to mention to you, I'm a board member for an agency here in upstate New York called Aspire Hope, New York, Inc. It used to be entitled Finger Lakes Parent Network. We work with individuals and parents and children with depression, anxiety, autism. I myself am a person with depression, anxiety, and autism, and my son is also. And so I actually had my Patty Bernardo from our agency contact you because this is definitely something that would be very powerful for our organization.
Good.
Oh, wonderful. I would love to hear from her, and I will definitely respond immediately. So thank you so much.
Yeah,
and you're in upstate New York, and I'm in the city, so I'm not that far from you.
Yeah, you can connect with.
No, you're not. No, you're not.
Loves to do stuff.
I want to get to you. I'm trying to get. She was waving her hand. I'm trying to figure. She's waving it now. I'm trying to figure out how to get you. How did I do that with her?
Hi.
You're trying to get to Renee? I think you're trying to get to Renee, I think.
Yes.
Okay, I unmuted myself.
There you go.
Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
First of all, I wanted to say that it took me a few minutes to get on here because it was very moving for me to watch the movie. Not only because I've experienced suicide in my family, but because really you could tell, Jackie, how you poured your heart out over the 5 years plus of making this happen. And we could actually feel those sentiments and those feelings that you had. And I think you did an amazing job of doing that. So I want to applaud you for that. And then there were two things. One of them was a word that kept coming up, and I think even T.O.N.E-z mentioned this about stigma. And, you know, I think that's like a 4-letter word. That's not 4 letters. But, you know, it starts with just the depression. I mean, that if your child has depression, there's a stigma to attach. If you have PTSD, there's a stigma attached. Years ago, if you saw a psychologist or a professional psychiatrist, whatever you were seeing, there was a stigma attached. And then obviously, if somebody takes their life, the stigma surrounds their death. And then after the aftermath, their life and the people who remain. And so I'm not really sure, you know, that word came up for several people during the movie. I'm not really sure how we can take it out of the dirty word, 4-letter category and move it. But I really think that that's an important thing that has to happen now. There's no stigma attached. And I don't know that it's like another disease, because you might see someone has a disease. You might know they're getting a certain treatment. It's something that a child can be riddled with from the time they're a child, as you said, and T.O.N.E said. We could be having people right here on this right now that are saddled with depression or experiences. And I think what you did by bringing it out, really talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's not be embarrassed by it anymore.
Yeah, I think that's so important. And especially for those of you who don't know Renee, Renee works in the industry, and her husband is also a psychiatrist or psychologist.
Psychologist in private practice.
But so she's actually in the mental health industry and shares her brother Stephen's story in the film. So thank you so much, Renee. That means a lot coming from you, because I know your experience within the industry as well and within this whole field. And I really do think that erasing the stigma is a conversation we need to have on a mainstream level in society, because that's the reason why people don't seek out the help that they need. And I feel like not only is mental health related to suicide, but it's also related to, you know, when we see school shootings, when we see domestic violence, if people were not mentally afflicted, they wouldn't be beating up their partners. They wouldn't be, the thought of shooting up their classmates wouldn't even enter their heads.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to get mental health reform like immediately, because it affects so many other issues in this country.
You know what you said about that. It wasn't in the movie, but I had shared with you. You mentioned that my brother, who had been this peaceful hippie in the late '60s, had built up this arsenal that none of us knew about, and this became like sort of an obsession of his. But since his death, every time is a shooting, like a workplace shooting or something like that occurs, I thank God that my brother chose to just take his life. It's a horrible statement to make, just take his life, because knowing such anger that he had toward his workplace and losing his job, I really truly believe this arsenal was intended for him to take out some action on the people that he felt wronged him. And so it's a terrible thought, but that's how I feel every time I see one of these workplace shootings. Thank God he didn't do that.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's a colleague of mine and a friend of mine that I went to hypnotherapy school with. One of his former colleagues in a previous profession did show up to work and shoot people. And it was one of the only female shooters that we had in the country. And, you know, hearing that, and when he talks about it, he says that they don't know, but they think that she had gone off her medication. And so I think that there's something related to what we're putting in our brains with chemical medications and what it's doing to our brains. Obviously, not everybody who's on chemical medications is grabbing a gun and shooting people, but I think that the link needs to be investigated a little bit more with why are certain people and what is the link within either their mental illness or what medications are they on, or did they stop taking, what's going on here that's leading to that action. Because I don't think anybody just wakes up with that idea in their head. They're going to, you know, shoot themselves or anybody else. I don't think that that's, you know, so I think that's something that's what's going on, because this was not something we had in our society that was prevalent 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's only been within the last 20 years that it's been at the level it's at now. So it makes me ask why and what's going on and what changed.
I mean, I'm sure you raised children and you were raised, so we can see the societal difference, the expectations, the pressure to keep up and compete, especially living out where you're living where I am too. So there are pockets everywhere. So we know that's changed. We know the foods, you know, the ingredients added to the food. And then like you said, you know, I know my husband has had more than one patient who has been on a drug that was not created for this, but is being used to treat mental illness, and have taken their lives. That, you know, just whatever chemical reaction occurred in their body metabolically, it just actualized. So I think we have to look at what we're taking in, the environmental pollution, the noise pollution, and the food, and see, be more loving human beings, you know?
Absolutely. That's why
T.O.N.E
Very important.
You,
Very
you,
important.
you said something, Tones, in the movie that even if they say they're okay,
Yeah.
still go further because it's
Yep.
not coulda, woulda, shoulda. That doesn't count. But
Yep.
it's that you connect with somebody and you go deeper with them.
Yep. That's a fact.
Yeah.
So thanks again, Jackie and Tones. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, Renee. And I appreciated you sharing your story, sharing Stephen's story in the film. And I hope that it helps people to understand and realize, like you've said before, you know, Stephen grew up, his nickname was Giggles growing up. This is a guy who was not mentally ill, was not depressed. You would never think he would end up killing himself. But, you know, circumstances of life, and I don't, you know, from hearing your story, hearing Stephen's story, and hearing some of the other stories I've heard, and some of the stories told in the film, and a lot of the other stories I've heard, you know, I believe that it was circumstances that changed Stephen into what he, you know, the events that led up to his demise. But as you mentioned in the film, because medications do change people.
Mhm.
And, you know, and it's not only that, it's circumstances. They lose their job, they lose their benefits, their life changes in a way that they're not prepared to deal with. And that's what I've been afraid of with this current pandemic, is that people are losing their jobs, they're losing their way of life, they're losing what's comfortable to them. And that's really scary to a lot of people. So it's had my concern with what's going on in people who are stuck with people who are in domestic violent relationships, or people who were not violence before, but they had an outlet before. They could go play poker with their friends, or go to the bar, or go to the bowling alley, or whatever their outlet was that they did every week to unwind after work. Now they don't have that. And so now they're stuck at home, and maybe they're drinking more, maybe they're abusing other substances. And so I'm afraid of violence, uptick of violence. I'm afraid of the uptick in suicide. And all of these things have been concerning me, because when you listen to your story with, you know, people lose their jobs and they lose their health insurance, and they need their health insurance because they have issues. So there's a lot going on in our present society that I felt was so important that we add that one chapter about the 2020 pandemic, which we just did that like 2 weeks ago, last week. I called up my buddy and was like, do we have time to do this? And he was like, yes, come over. And we did it. And you know, I felt that was so important because of what's going on right now. And especially because I know your story with Stephen.
Thank you. I agree. And I think that what you're doing, talking, and I think that a proliferation of talking about this does take the stigma away. And again, when I speak, and I've told you this before, I tell people, you know, you can't follow what all the professionals say, prevent suicide with your kids. Be in touch with the person, talk to them, notice differences, be there for them. And then there's still no guarantee. But at least you can know that you did everything good, and you can feel comfortable with that fact. That's all you can do.
Exactly. That's what I was just telling this to my mom the other day, that, you know, the hard fact that a lot of people don't like to believe when it comes to suicide is not every suicide is preventable. There are some people who genuinely want to die for whatever reason. Maybe, you know, for whatever reason. I'm not even going to speculate their reasons. But I do believe people who are hurting, who genuinely want to live and they just don't see a way out of it and need coping mechanisms, you can reach them, you can save them. But you can't save everybody. And even Kevin Briggs talks about that in the film. And, you know, I believe he's such a compassionate person. When I listen to him talk, like I wasn't there to interview him personally. I wish I was, because I just want to give him a huge hug, because I feel like he's such a good-hearted person. But he talks about it even, you know, you can sit there and look someone in the eyes and talk to them, and they still go, they still jump, you still lose them. You can't save everybody. So a lot of people, when somebody close to you dies by suicide, the first thing is they are consumed with guilt, thinking that maybe there's something they could have done or said that could have prevented it. And I don't believe that. I don't believe if someone is genuinely suicidal that we can really, truly prevent that. We can we can talk to them, we can hug them, we can love them. But if they really want to go and they've made up their mind, they're not going to even tell you that they've made up their mind. You're not going to know.
Check this out, y'all. It's funny you say that because there's a movie, right? It's called About Jimmy. I don't know if you guys could try to type it in or remember it. It's called
I've actually heard of it. Yep.
Aha! Somebody heard of it. Good.
I've heard of it.
Every time I bring this up, people be like, "What?" But the story is, and it was a Lifetime movie. That's right. I watched Lifetime with that.
Yeah.
The guy Jimmy, who plays Jimmy, he's this teenage kid, and I can tell the story because it's based on a true story. And you know who's in it? Meredith Baxter from Family Ties. She's in it. So it's funny you say that because, and I can tell you, it's not like one of those movies where I'm ruining the ending because it's not one of those kind of movies. But I know because I'm not gonna ruin it, because clearly if I'm saying suicide, you already know what happened. But the film, the reason why I felt it's so powerful, and it doesn't get enough credit. I think that movie should be shown in schools because it's about this high school kid. I'm gonna make it real brief. It's about the high school kid who was just going through it. There was no his school was good, family was great, but the kid he didn't have any mental problems. He wasn't happy. And he was going through a lot of stuff, and he missed school, he missed hockey practice, the whole thing. And his parents was like, concerned. Now the mom, your mother's, mom's got that, forget sixth sense. She had the 17th sense, and he said something. The dad was like, he's being a teenager. But here's the thing, and this happens a lot. He woke up one day, happy, told everybody, hey, he loved them, sorry for acting that way, danced with his little sister. There was a party, he went to it, and everybody was thinking like, yo, he's all right. Like he probably just had a little teenage moment. There was a scene in the movie where he drove to this little secluded area, went by the lake, laid down and cried. He left school, matter of fact, and went there and cried. You know what that moment was, a pivotal moment where he just decided, I know what I'm gonna do. So no one knew what was going on with him. And when he came to the conclusion where, I'm just gonna do it, not announce I'm gonna do it, not play with it online. Well, this movie was a little bit before the Facebook and all that, but not throw things out there just for attention when you're really not gonna do it. And then, you know what I mean? And everybody thought it was fine, and you pretty much know that. And so I ain't gonna say the rest of it because let me tell you something. If this movie doesn't make you at least tear up, I'll remember your name and ban you from the next time. No, but it's really good. Remember, it's called About Jimmy. Matter of fact, I think you can watch it on YouTube. I think it's one of those movies that somebody uploaded, but you should check it out. But it relates to what you were saying, Jacqui, when you was talking about, like, you can't really talk anybody out of it because sometimes you don't even know they're gonna do it. Because a lot of times they go, he was fine, or she was fine, or we had no clue. Like, there was no clues. It's not like they're walking around with a sign that says, I'm going to kill myself at 3 o'clock tomorrow. Like, it's not there. So they could be laughing, joking with you, shake your hand, give you a pound, y'all see you tomorrow. And then the next day, you're like, what? He or she did what? And it blows your mind. So I ain't mean to drag that on, but you guys should really check that movie out. It's really, really good. So go ahead. Bring it to me.
Yeah. You know what? I might even add that to the recommended viewing. I have on the website, on the I Chose Life film website, I have resources, and one of the resources is recommended viewing. And while I'm talking about that for a minute, there are two films that I have on there that I do want to mention real quick while you're talking about that film. There's a film on there called A Fine Wife that is about a woman named Michelle who had bipolar disorder. This is a documentary that was made by her husband, Randall. And they had a 6-year-old, she was 6 years old at the time, and Michelle died by suicide because of her bipolar disorder. And Randall, you know, when she died, Randall really felt like he needed to tell their story. He needed to tell her story. And he had documented a lot of their marriage. So watching this film is like watching an inside, like if you're living with them, like watching the stuff you never see. When you hear about your friend has bipolar disorder, okay, but you don't live with them. You don't know what it's really like. And so this film really shows that. It was really heartbreaking, but really important to watch. So if you know anyone who has bipolar disorder, or if you have bipolar disorder, I think this is a really important film that brings a lot of awareness to that subject. And then there's another film called Blue that was written and directed by a friend of mine named Gabby. Gabby and I went to film school together in Florida, and we both ended up out in LA. And she did a master's program with film, and she ended up writing a story based on her own suicide experience, where she survived with the help of, she went to a mental hospital, and she found loving, supportive community and people there, and that a beautiful friendship. So a platonic friendship between man and woman that never turns romantic or sexual. And I love that she did that with the film, because I feel like Hollywood never does that. They always, whenever you see a man and woman become friends in a Hollywood movie, they're gonna end up, it's gonna be romantic and sexual. This film isn't like that, and it's really about a beautiful friendship saving a life, and I think that was really special.
You know what's real special right now, Jack? I just made you the host. All right.
Yeah, I saw that. Thank you. That out.
I know you're probably going, she's talking this deep stuff, and he's talking about host stuff. No, but there was a reason why she needed to be the host.
Thank you. But yeah. So I think those two films, if you're interested in films along this subject matter, Blue by my friend Gabby, and A Fine Wife, they're on, if you go to ichoselifefilm.com and you go to resources, they're under recommended viewing, and you can see a trailer and links to where you can view their films. But those are two other important films, and I think I'm gonna add About Jimmy to that list.
Yes, I'm telling you, watch. When y'all see that, I'm not saying nothing bad about the other two films you talking about, because I'm gonna check those out. But check out About Jimmy. I'm telling you, that right there, it fell right in line with what you were saying a little while ago about you just there's no real sign sometimes, especially when it's a kid, teenager, and you have a moment where you like, oh my gosh, the first thing parents think is they're on drugs, and then if you say something and then a couple of days later go by and then everything's fine, you go, oh, they just being a teenager, or they probably have some girlfriend or boyfriend problem, and then what happens. So you're right. Sometimes it's not about, you can't save everybody, but when you see somebody, I think the best thing, like the young lady said a little while ago about your diet, your mental health, all of that stuff, because they could lead to it. So it's almost like if you know there's a car crash 4 miles away, forget the second and third mile, before you take off, you say, let's go that way. So if you got something that you think can happen, don't wait till you get a third there and go, oh, by the way, maybe we shouldn't go there because it's too late. So sometimes, it'd be those little things that you can, and it could be a depression thing. It could be someone that's heartbroken. Pay attention to their words. Pay attention to what they say, because sometimes they could just be saying, oh man, I miss her, I miss him. And you go, you'll get another one. But then later on, you start noticing things like they're drinking a little too much, they're missing. Those little things may not lead to that, but they could. And a lot of people that go through that and do that and think about contemplating suicide or even about to do it, a lot of them just want like time, like someone to listen to them.
Yeah.
It's not about everybody just keep internalizing it. It could be like they really want somebody to listen to them. And all their friends are like, man, don't worry about it. Let's just smoke and drink and everything will be fine. And then so they go on from there.
Hey guys.
Yes.
It's me again. And that's a really big issue with I can tell you from my experience, I'm going to be 50 in July. Okay, it's also my 30 year since I graduated. Now, I was bullied. I had a rather smaller graduating class, but I was bullied by quite a few members of my graduating class, and I wasn't diagnosed with autism until I was an adult. And so I struggled a lot on all ends. And in my struggles, my friends would run bullies off. I had 3 friends that were in my neighborhood that would go around running the bullies away from me. And so they were advocating for me for so long. And then, but I was still spiraling, and they're like, you know, Marlene, it's a miracle you're with us now to tell your story, to be out there. I was at a conference in Albany with Families Together, which is Aspire Hope is part of the Families Together of New York organization. We had big conferences, and I've been working on trying to find my voice to tell the stories that I have from mine, because I was basically bullied into silence. I couldn't tell how I felt, because if I told how I felt, I'd get bullied even worse. And I felt so lost. And then seeing my son's struggles, and like I said, right before my son got diagnosed with autism is when I finally got diagnosed, which put a lot of the pieces to the puzzle together. But I also helped my son keep his voice so that even with these struggles, he could continue to be stronger. Where I didn't become stronger until 10 years ago, actually.
Wow. Yeah, that's, thank you for sharing that.
Yes.
You're very welcome.
And you ain't gonna be 50. Not gonna, we don't.
Yes, I am.
You ain't gonna be 50. You're gonna be like.
Yes, I am.
You're gonna be 38. Not gonna. So if you know, I'm serious. You don't. You know, I'm not just throwing compliments. You really don't. All right.
Thank
if y'all
you.
notice, I put my email in the little chat section, and Jackie knows I tend to do this. So sorry, Jackie, got to do it.
Oh, it's all good.
If you guys ever need an ear, I mean, I just, because I'm part of like different organizations and stuff like that, and so sometimes, you know, you might email me and say, hey, I'm dealing with something, and I'll email you back, and maybe I can say something to boost your spirits or not. But I just put my email there. That's my personal email. So if any of you guys ever want to, you know.
Or maybe Tones will put your name in a song.
Wow.
Or maybe song.
Thanks, Jack. My email's in the chat, so if any of you guys, you know, you can just, no problem. Or if you have, or if something's going on with your kid, because I got a 20-year-old son, believe it or not, who's well, he'll be 21 in August, so he's 21 now, in his eyes.
Wow.
Well, mine is 21. He'll be 22 in November.
Wow.
So I guess my little 39 thing just ain't even gonna work out for you then if you say that. That went right out the window.
Damn. So please tell me it gets better when they reach their 20s, because I've got 5 teenagers.
Yeah, they're just 20-year-old teenagers. That's all. Same thing.
20-year-old. You know what? At this point, I'll take toddlers over teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
I had 5 under 5. I'll take 5 toddlers over 5 teenagers. I tell you what, teenagers talk back. Toddlers, you get nap time.
That's true. Okay, well look, unfortunately, guys, I gotta run. I've been getting these little notifications, and I missed a few calls, but that's why I made you the host, Jack. By the way, my email's there if any of y'all want to just chat and say what's up, or just say hi, or lie about your age and say you're older than you really are. I mean, however you want to do it. Just let me know. All right, so I'm gonna get up out of here. And
all right, so I'll talk to you later. Have a great one. Thank you so much for joining us.
Okay, now how the hell do I get up? Hold on.
I don't know.
It's gonna take me 8 hours.
I guess you can just exit without quitting the whole meeting.
It says leave meeting.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to. Well,
No,
no,
it says end the meeting. Oh, that's on mine, I think.
Yeah, here it says leave meeting on the bottom right.
Okay. Yes, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk with you soon. Is he gone? I think he's out of here. Is he out of here? Maybe. All right, so does anyone have any other questions or anything else they'd like to say about the film? Any comments, any personal, anything to share?
I'm glad you covered just about every possible angle of this crisis.
I tried. I'm sure there's plenty more to cover, but I tried my best to cover as many angles as possible. Because of my stepdad, I knew the military was a big one to tackle. Because of what I know about nutrition, thanks to my grandmother, I knew that was a big issue. You know, ever since I was a child, when she would see me depressed, she would say, "You need 15 minutes of sunlight." And I was, you know, rebellious and, "No, I don't want to go out in the sun." And sure enough, that would have helped a lot. But, you know, rebellious teenagers. So tell them to go out in the sun and they don't want to. Tell them to stay inside and they want to go outside. That's what I'm dealing with now. But yeah, so I think that there's a lot to talk about when it comes to suicide. It's not a black and white issue, and it's not just related to mental illness. And that was something I really wanted to get across to people was I think people think that suicide and mental illness are only mutually exclusive. And I don't believe that.
And it's brave that statement, Jackie, because it's a lot easier to say this is the correlation between, because it helps us explain why things happen. It's a lot more difficult and brave to say this isn't always what happens. We really need to look at this more fully.
Right. Yeah, I think it's a big subject, and I think there's so much more to even say on the subject that I think my film is a conversation opener, but I feel like there's still so much more that needs to be said on the subject. And that's why I wanted to start with history and letting people know that this is not a new subject by any means. This has been around since people have been around, but this is also something that we don't talk about in a way that needs to be talked about, and people are not getting the help that they need. So I think that's really important, and having been somebody who's understood what it's been like to just need to talk about it, I think that that's really important for people. I know that some people are not going to actually act on it, but they need to be able to talk about how they're feeling and get these feelings out. And if they can't talk about it for whatever reason, then they need to be able to run or paint or write or have some sort of outlet so that it's not being bottled up inside.
Yeah, I think my art, and my creativity is what helps me stay and thrive.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, that was, even when I was making this film on that subject, when I was editing, you know, I would spend 12 to 16 hours a day editing for months. And that was, you know, I'm sitting there listening to suicide stories over and over and over again as I'm editing. So every night after editing, I had an arsenal of art supplies at my disposal, and I painted. And so I have, like, I want to say maybe 20, 30 paintings that came just from me editing this film. So I've thought about actually just giving those paintings away and just sending them to people who need them or want them, because I believe art is something that should be shared, not kept. So I'm not going to hang all these paintings. So if anybody would like a painting, email me and I will send you a painting that I made while I was editing this film. And that was something that helped cleanse my mental palate before going to bed, because after editing and talking about suicide for 12 hours, you don't want to go to sleep with that as the last thing on your mind. So I would paint, and that would put my mind in a more positive place.
That's good. That's good. Very good.
Hey, Nick.
Hello. Keep painting. Just want to tell you,
It's my
we're proud of you.
there. Vietnam veteran.
We're all
Thank you.
very proud of you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. That's my mom, my grandmother, and my stepdad right there.
We're very proud of you. Very informative, and you did a great job.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations to the family as well.
She spent a lot of time, a lot of work, heart and soul, poured her heart and soul in this, so we're very proud.
Thank you. And Nick, my stepdad right there, is the man who actually encouraged me to go through with this when I was talking to him about doing a documentary on the making of somebody else's film about suicide. And we got into a conversation and he said, why don't you make a full documentary about suicide? So you can really thank Nick, my stepdad, for sparking that idea to really go forward with a full-on documentary about this subject, because I was probably never going to publicly talk about it. And as you've noticed, I haven't ever talked about I talked about my marriage, but that's as far as I'm going with that, because this isn't about me. I realized this subject isn't about me. This is a universal subject, and it affects so many people. And I'm one of hundreds of millions of people on the planet that have experienced suicidal ideation and gone through what I went through with domestic violence. So in no way, shape, or form do I think that this is exclusive to me, and this is everybody's film, not just mine. So thank you for being a part of it, and thank you all for watching and being a part of this premiere event. And I hope that you will all go on to spread the word and encourage your friends and family to watch this film as well. I hope and I think it will save some lives.
Thank you guys for this platform.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Afterwards.
Renee, love you.
Thank you. And everybody, you guys all have my email address. You can all email info@starseedpictures.net, and with anything at all, and we will get back to you immediately. So also, I hope you guys enjoyed the guided meditation MP3. My good friend Jacqui and I worked on that, and it's special, and it has binaural beats in it. So it's actually, if you listen to it with headphones, it's actually made to bring your brain waves from a beta state down into a theta state. So you'll be calm and relaxed, and it will scientifically, mathematically force your brain to go into a relaxed state because of the binaural beats. But you have to use headphones. So I hope you guys enjoy that. That's our free gift. But
Thank you so much. I love
for
the meditation.
Thank you. I hope you guys enjoy that. So download that. That's yours to keep. And I'm also a certified hypnotherapist. So if anybody is interested in hypnotherapy, email me and we'll talk more.
Okay. That's why it was so good. It was terrific.
Thank you so much. Have a great evening, everybody.
You too.
Thank you, you too.
Bye-bye.